International Humanitarian Law, Part 4. At certain times in history, the only people who would be on a battlefield would be the combatants, fighting for one side or another in an armed conflict. In modern wars, there are many different categories of people found on a battlefield. In the next few slides, we will discuss various categories of people and how the rules governing their treatment vary. First, on the battlefield, it is only the combatants that can be targeted and killed by enemy combatants. It is only the combatants that are legally permitted to target and kill their enemy. Second, and most importantly, we must understand that all people, under all circumstances, regardless of the category they fall under, must be protected from harm and treated with dignity when they are not participating in hostilities. That is an ever-present rule in international humanitarian law. Civilians are the people who find themselves in war zones and who are not participating in an armed conflict. They are the innocent bystanders to armed conflict. Unfortunately, nearly half of the casualties in today's wars are civilians. When Henri Dunant and Clara Barton experienced war, only about 5% of the casualties in war were civilians. Military forces operating in the vicinity of civilian populations have a responsibility to protect these civilians from harm, both during fighting and during periods of military occupation. Combatants are members of the armed forces of a party to the conflict. They are lawful targets while fighting, but if captured, they are entitled to prisoner of war status and protections under the Third Geneva Convention. During the Gulf War, thousands of captured Iraqi soldiers were granted POW status and visited by the Red Cross. This demonstrates how even enemies in wartime retain legal rights and protections. Medical and religious personnel are given special protection under IHL because of their humanitarian roles. They must not be attacked and are expected to display protective emblems such as the Red Cross when feasible. An attack on a marked field hospital or a chaplain is a grave violation of IHL. Conversely, misuse of emblems, such as disguising soldiers as medical staff, undermines trust and is itself unlawful. Civilians who directly take part in hostilities lose their protection against attack, but only for the duration of their participation. Once they disengage, they regain civilian protection. For example, if a civilian fires on soldiers during a battle, they can be lawfully targeted while fighting, but once they put down their weapon and return to civilian life, they cannot be attacked simply for what they did earlier. Unprivileged combatants, sometimes called unlawful combatants, do not have the right to fight and do not qualify for prisoner of war status if captured. However, they are still entitled to fundamental humanitarian protections. This category became widely discussed after 9/11 in the context of Guantanamo Bay detainees. However, even when their status is disputed, IHL requires humane treatment and prohibits torture or cruel treatment. During armed conflicts, certain civilians accompany armed forces onto the battlefield. Examples include journalists, supply contractors, and maintenance crews. While they retain civilian status, they should be issued identification designating their role and be treated as prisoners of war if captured by enemy forces. International humanitarian law protects civilian objects such as homes, schools, hospitals, and cultural sites. These places cannot be targeted unless they are being used for military purposes, such as storing weapons or housing troops. For example, a school being used as a base for launching attacks could lose its protection and become a lawful target. But if it is functioning as a school, attacking it would be a serious violation of IHL. This distinction highlights the importance of accurate intelligence before strikes are carried out. IHL also prohibits widespread, long-term, and severe damage to the natural environment. Such destruction can constitute a war crime under Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions. A stark example comes from the Gulf War in 1991, when retreating forces set fire to hundreds of Kuwaiti oil wells. The smoke, pollution, and environmental devastation lasted for years. Under modern IHL, deliberate acts of environmental destruction are not just tragedies but crimes, prosecutable on the international stage.